G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today we're going to be looking at... look, I'm making a video I don't really want to make. I don't just want to shit on a sculptor, but these models are bad, and we're going to talk about why people think they're bad, and a few of the excuses people want to give. It's going to be a little bit disjointed, I won't lie. It just needs to be said. So anyway, topic is the Varagya, I believe that's how you pronounce that, Varagya and Space Wolf Praetor. So obviously these sculpts have been previewed at a couple of open days, and basically everyone thinks they look like ass. Why is that? Well, I think there's some pretty objective reasons, so we'll get into that momentarily. This here is the promotional artwork contained within Book 7 that shows one of these Terminators. As you can see, it's quite different to the actual sculpts themselves, which are covered in all this fur hanging off them and these big twisted knotworks on their shoulders. It's actually rather restrained for a Space Wolf. Yes, he has the fur cloak, but realistically, if you ignore the cloak, you can pretty much just count this as a Terminator from any other Legion. He's got a couple of wolf's teeth or claws hanging off him, and of course the painted on knotwork. But that's about it. Really, it's pretty down to earth. Nothing like the Varagya Terminators themselves. So, when we discuss this, let's just go to the source. Here we have the Legion Praetor for the Space Wolves. People don't like this model at all, and it's getting a lot of grief. Why is this? Well, the devil's in the details, my friends. This model is poorly sculpted. And when I say that, I don't mean like this person doesn't know how to sculpt. They do. But the way they've actually put the individual components together doesn't look right to your eyes. And that's why people don't like it. On top of that, it reeks of computer designed as opposed to something that's been physically sculpted. When you look at little details, and we'll go into it momentarily, it really stands out. So here's our lovely 360 degree view of the model once my slow Australian internet loads up. The cloak is big and thick and heavy. This is thicker than most Primarch cloaks are. That said, it looks to be one part, along with most of the model, all seems to be one single part. If I was a betting man, I'd say that the bolt gun and the hand holding it, and the sword in its hand are separate parts, as well as the top knot, and pretty much everything else is just one piece, if I was a betting man. So yeah, it's not hideous, don't get me wrong, like, it's not hideous, but this is Forge World. We expect a certain degree of quality with their work. Now, the problem is when you get in close. The face looks like he's got Ron Perlman's head. He's got this massive jaw that's sitting way. His mouth is open more than from his nose to the top of his temples is in height. It doesn't look right to your eyes because human faces don't look like that. Even a distorted Astartes face doesn't look like that. It's kind of like the old Scream Halloween mask. So that looks odd. But the big thing that sticks out here, and it was actually pointed out to me by Ryan Kimmel, the sword. It's like the grip and the blade have been attached either side of a clenched fist instead of a single grip going through the fist. And I can only assume the reason for this is they've used CAD assets that they've already sculpted. So like they already have a Cataphractii Terminator template in AutoCAD. And they've just taken this template that exists and they've moved it around and reposed it to make this model, and then they've just attached parts. Well, because of that, it looks almost like a piece of Lego. Like they just plugged a sword in on the top and a handle on the bottom, but the hand hasn't changed. There's no grip. It just disappears into the hand. Like, this is the palm. The palm can't be on the outside of the grip. This grip should be showing where this mouse cursor is at the moment, it doesn't look right to your eyes. Further to that, the fur is fucking atrocious on this and the Viragia Terminators themselves. It just looks like bananas hanging on a big bundle. It doesn't look like fur should look. In fact, each individual piece of fur is the same size as these fangs and teeth hanging off his armour. You could almost confuse it for he's wearing a whole pelt of fangs. It doesn't look right, or it looks like they're in big dreadlocks or something. None of it looks quite right to your eyes. And you've seen a lot of fur here. I know I didn't really plan on this, but I'm going to open up another tab and we're going to look at someone else who's got a lot of fur in their armour. Let's look at Horus. Now, is it fair to compare a Primarch and all his detail? In fact, Space Wolves. Let's just look at Leman Russ himself. Is it fair to compare a Primarch to a Space Marine? Probably not, but I'm gonna. So, look at the fur on this. Yeah, there's these big clumps, but each of the big clumps of fur is broken up with lots of thin lines and streaks all through it. There is so much going on. There is no way you're going to confuse this fur with the teeth hanging on the pelt. It is nothing like it. It's completely different. At no point are you going to look at it and say, this fur doesn't look anything like fur. In fact, it's spectacularly sculpted. So, big thumbs up to Simon Egan, I believe it was, that sculpted this, like most of the Primarchs. Fantastic job. And yeah, the fur looks right. Same thing again, if I can find Horus. Give me a chance here. Horus has the dead wolf on top of his chassis, I guess you can say. So there's the wolf up on top. And same thing. There's big knots, but it's all broken up into these fine little strands of fur. Really nicely sculpted. Now, keep that pictured in your mind when I swap back to this. Does that fur on his shoulders and pelt look anything like the fur here? No, it doesn't. Same thing with these Terminators. These are the Viragia themselves. These are symptoms of the same problem as the Praetor. Big banana strands of fur hanging off them, as opposed to that nice fine fur that we're used to. I mean, compare the fur that's making up the wolf pelts with their own beards that are right next to it, and their own hair. Have a look how fine their hair is. Now compare it to the fur. It doesn't look right. And your mind knows it doesn't look right. Look how wispy the hair is on this guy's head. And he's got a well-sculpted head. That one. Most of them don't. Compare it to the fur that's right next to it. Nothing alike. Well, they're both fur. They should look pretty similar, right? So getting back to our Praetor. We've got problems with the fur. We've got problems with the sword going through the hand. What else is wrong? Well, this sculpted on detail around the knees. Looks amateurish. I'm not sure why, but basically it doesn't look like smooth lines carved into a flat surface. Instead, every surface is slightly rounded off, so it looks more like someone has a piece of blue tack or green stuff, and they've just pressed into it. And rather than having a crisp line, it's actually just deformed the surface, as opposed to creating a nice slit in the surface. I know it's a hard concept to explain, but yeah, it is what it is, right? So, moving on. Something else is very wrong with this model. Ignoring the way that he's posed and that kind of thing, the same problem that he has with the right hand, he has with the left hand. No pistol grip, no trigger guard, nothing. This is a clenched fist with a bolt gun slapped on top of it. What the fuck is that? I didn't point this out. This is pointed out to me. It is a detail I would have noticed with time, but not until I went through and actually had a close-up look at all these pictures. The other thing is, like, the way that the fur comes out on the shoulders right now, it looks like tentacles or tendrils, and it's only in the painting that you can define that detail, and that's a real shame, in my opinion. So, yeah. For those who don't like these models, they're not being picky. they've got every fucking right to not like this model. The other thing that's a bit of a shame is this knotwork on the shoulder pads is really deep, the relief on it. Instead of being nice and shallow like on the knee pads, it's these real deep, veiny Celtic knots. And it's just too much, it's too thick. If they're a little more shallow and more like a decal, it'll look much better. My personal suggestion to anyone who buys these Terminators is to file off the shoulders. File off the shoulder pads or scalp it off, clean it right up, smooth it out, apply decals instead. You will make these models look 15-20% better just by doing that one thing. I'm not trying to be a cunt here. I mean, I am, but that is where the problems lie with these models. The way that the shoulder pads stick right out, the way the fur looks, all that is problematic. Now, this is the point where a lot of people are turning around and saying, well, A, be thankful you're getting anything at all. In which case I have to say, fuck you, that's not how capitalism works. Second is people who say, well, if you think you can do better. Well, it's not a matter of if I think I can do better. Forge World has been around for a long time. We have an established level of quality with them, and we expect that quality to be maintained. When we see something that's naturally going down in quality, people are going to ask questions. Let's apply the same logic, the be thankful you got something, and if you've got a problem, why don't you do better, to something else we all have in life. A car, maybe. Imagine if you bought a car, and the model before cost exactly the same amount. But this new car, it's missing features, the interior looks like shit, performance is terrible on the road, you'd be pretty pissed off about it. And when you went to the manufacturer and said, like, look, this car isn't working properly, the engine knocks, it's got faults, it's only running on 3 cylinders, that kind of thing, the manufacturer would be like, fuck, bring it in, we'll do a warranty thing, we'll fix it right up for you, that kind of thing, right? For some reason, with models, it's completely different. It's like, oh, yeah, this model, you know, things aren't right with it, it's got a whole bunch of problems, and they're just like, yeah, well, fuck it, be happy you've got something at all. And that's just terrible. So, let's not get into that mindset, okay? Anyway, not a video I wanted to make. I've just sort of winged it, obviously. But these are all little flaws that you can see with these models. Assets that look like they've just been Legoed on. And that's the best way I can describe it. They're being Legoed on. They're just being plopped onto parts of the model. Specifically the weapons. The fur. The fur is fucking atrocious on these models. I don't know whether it's because these models are 3D printed, perhaps, and that's how fine they could do it, but then how did they do such fine work on the braids in the hair and beard that the fur is so terrible in comparison right next to it? And of course, the knotwork on the knees. The knees, again, it might be a limitation of the printing of these models, because these models now are being made in a computer. In the old days, someone used to sit there with a bit of green stuff and some wire on a piece of cork and sculpt things like that. Now they're being made in a computer, and just like Lego bricks, they just pluck the bits they need and they stick it all together. And the only way to get that out of the computer is to machine it or to 3D print it. And right now, that's where the problems are coming in. Anyway, I'm back with the Outer Circle. I hope people found this informative. I'm not trying to have a whinge, I'm just trying to point out the things that people have picked up that are wrong with this model. Because a couple of these examples were picked up by other people. Anyway, thank you all for watching the episode. Leave your thoughts and feedback below, and I'll see you all next time.